This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 931, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you. Hey, this is Josh Flanagan. I'm here with Conor Kilpatrick.
Hi, I'm coming to you from the Heat Dome in LA.
Heat Dome. That's nothing. It's going to get much hotter.
The back of my neck is moist.
Oh.
Moist.
And we'll check on the situation of your thighs later.
Ooh.
Strictly in a medical sense.
Oh, damn.
This is I almost referred to something that I said in another show that I cut it out of the show.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 931. Sometimes we cut things out. Every week, one of us picks the book they like the best from this, because sometimes it's about time, and other times it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. They pick the book they like best from their stack of comics. I just don't want you to think that we're running some kind of sham over here is all.
I cut at least an hour out of every show.
That explains all the money we've saved on bandwidth. The best comic's called The Pick of the Week. We'll talk about that comic. We'll talk about other books from the week. There's a patron pick. There's listener mail. It's going to be a good time. I hope that you feel just even a bit of the catharsis that I pick up from doing this. And I know that Conor does. Mm-hmm. I think it carries. That's what I think. That's what people tell me. That's what I go with. And that's going to make me feel good, which makes us have more fun. There will be spoilers, which is fun in a way. I'm not going to lie. I don't like being spoiled. It's kind of fun to spoil. It's a little bit fun to spoil. But exercise your caution. I really do care. Conor, you were forced. You were compelled. It was your duty to pick.
We posted the Pick of the Week on Instagram, as we always do, and it was Scarlett #1, and someone in the comments said, hey, it must be Josh's week. No, sir. I was going to say no, sir, or madam, but we just did the survey. It's a sir. No, sir, it's Conor. I had to pick. It was me. This is my second G.I. Joe pick this year. Scarlett #1, the new miniseries from the Energon universe, Kelly Thompson, Marco Ferrari, Lilo Russ Wooten. And, the beat rolls on with these books.
And the rhythm is going to get you.
Scarlett's one of my favorite G.I. Joes.
Sure.
Is it the red hair thing? I don't know.
She was extremely competent.
She was awesome. She was one of the original Joes. She was one of the most badass Joes. She loved Snake Eyes. We all loved Snake Eyes.
I want to point out, I think that there's definitely, there's an attractiveness about redheaded people, but there is also an attractiveness about competence. You're like, she's a badass. Yeah. And I always liked that.
And so I was excited when they announced this was the third miniseries after Duke and Cobra Commander, as we tell the story of the new G.I. Joe still forming in this Energon universe. So, the Duke miniseries sort of ends with G.I. Joe formed in its most nascent way. Mm-hmm. They've got a name, they've got a base, and they've got 4 people. Here it's a little unclear. This may have taken place a bit in the past because she's just an operative for the military. She's like an undercover spy. This feels very much like, I don't know, not James Bondy, but very sort of international woman of mystery type of story where she swims up on a house in Monaco and rescues a bunch of women who are being sex trafficked. At the same time, she runs into her old friend / roommate / military operative buddy, Jinx.
Jinx entering the story a lot earlier than
the past version. Than in the comics, who has been missing. And so that throws her off her game for a second. Jinx also has I've never actually said this word out loud. I realize.
Let's go for it.
Arashikage?
Arashikage.
Arashikage.
I think there's an I in there.
There is an I in there. Arashikage.
Yep.
I realized that while reading this. I've never said this word out loud. I'm going to have to on the show.
But that's not the word. What's the word for that? There's a different one for the actual symbol.
Yeah, but that's the symbol of the clan.
Right. The Arashikage is the clan. I forget what the thing is called.
I
remember when I thought it was a good idea to get that as a tattoo.
Yes. Oh, we all did.
Now I don't anymore.
Every single guy in the 80s thought about getting it on their forearm. Mm-hmm. I did. So she has the tattoo on her thigh. And, in the course of Scarlett busting up this ring, she goes and she tries to chase down Jinx, but she can't get to her. And so she, of course, gets in trouble with her bosses because she's a rogue and goes home to find Stalker in her house with some confidential files, who tells her basically she's got to go to Japan and infiltrate the Arashikage clan and find out what's going on there. And which she does with the help of Snowjob, who seems like the most awesome dude in the world. Likes Tiki, likes hanging out. The girls love him. He's a nice guy.
That doesn't seem surprising to me.
She gets to the clan. She beats up a bunch of ninjas. She kneels before the Hardmaster, offers him her sword, and then Storm Shadow knocks her on the back of the head with the hilt of his sword. And that's our introduction to the Storm Shadow of this Energon universe. I thought this was super fun. The Marco Ferrari art was terrific. It had a little bit of cartooniness, but it had a lot of energy, a lot of dynamism. I really like this. This is terrific. I'm really happy that we've entered the ninja world now, which we hadn't previously. Really excited to get to know the Hard Master and Storm Shadow of this world. I mean, like, if you're going to do it differently, then you got to assume this is going to be a different Storm Shadow, right? A different story. Because the comics, Storm Shadow from the very beginning almost is revealed to be a Joe undercover, or at least a good guy undercover.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we meet him in the silent issue, and that's issue 21. And then by issue 24 or 5, we know he's undercover in Cobra, just trying to find out who killed the Hard Master. So we know, like, basically from jump. So it'll be interesting to see what they do differently here.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where this sort of took place.
It seems like it's before, but Stalker might be coming from the Joes. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and I keep sort of mixing up my continuities, trying to remember, like, wait, okay, so then, this is new. I got to remind myself of that. I liked it. And the other thing that I was curious about sort of when it started was, by the way, Snow Job has extra Snow Job outfits, but apparently you can only wear them if you also have red hair.
It's a lot of gingers in G.I. Joe.
We want to put Snow Job in here, but we only need a pilot. That's okay. You know what? He doesn't have to ski. He can do other things. Anyway, so it's been one of the things about these G.I. Joe comics is that the people writing them, most of them, not the people drawing them necessarily, the people writing them all have to claim their level of G.I. Joe.
Bona fides.
Yes, in a way. Let's just take the idea that most of the people reading this are going to be G.I. Joe nerds, right? So therefore, you don't really want to have somebody on here who's never had any real exposure to it or affection for it because it won't ring out right. So you kind of have to have a fan. And I had wondered, is Kelly Thompson that fan also? For no reason other than, I just wasn't sure. For some reason, didn't strike me. But that was stupid because clearly she knows it all very well. And I was happy about that. And I honestly also don't think it was one of those. It's one of sometimes we're gonna do the female character, so we're gonna have the female writer on it. Mm-hmm. And I asked her about this once. I ask a lot of people, like, do you feel like you're getting typecast on these characters? But I think that it brought something really cool to the character, and just like her, she's so good. She's developed into such a good comic book writer that she just takes all of that skill and wraps it around these sort of skeletons of concepts and really brought something together. I assume there's like some sort of creative committee, with
there has to be. They can't coordinate all these different books without a central spine of a story, which I assume Josh Williamson is in charge of, since he's doing the majority of the books, or the editor or whoever.
Yeah, it was really fun. It delivered. I don't know what it is just about all of the other work she's done. When I've talked to her, I just thought, is she a G.I. Joe person too? And she totally is. I thought that's great. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know that I would have made my pick of the week, but I don't know that I wouldn't have.
I'll be honest, it was a tough week to choose. Yes. I didn't have a ton of books. I didn't have like a tiny amount, but I had like a low and middle range amount of books. Mm-hmm. I think I had 15. And most of the stuff I read wasn't great.
It's fine.
Or fine. You'll notice, we're not talking about Kelly Thompson's other book, which I don't think is good anymore.
I like it. I could see why I enjoy the experience more. It's one of those things where I don't even know how to judge them. I just I'm enjoying this. I don't know if it's good or it might be bad, but I'm enjoying it. If that's it, you understand what I mean? Like, that's a thing.
The book, and so I was super excited for Scarlett, obviously, and enjoyed it immensely. And then I was very excited for the next book we're going to talk about, which we might as well just jump into. And, I don't know what you do, Josh. When I have my stack of books, I have favorites that I'm looking forward to. Like, I hope that's the pick of the week. I hope it's really good, right? Mm-hmm.
And you still keep those for late.
Yeah, but it's all done in segments just because of the way we get the books. So
right.
The last book I read overall was Uncanny X-Men 700. Try to figure that one out. You can't. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense. We're going to move on. X-Men 35, which was the final issue of the Krakoa era. And I was like, oh man, I hope this is great. I hope this is the pick of the week just because, I've been enjoying the the Croquet era.
The Croquet era. Who can forget?
I wanted it to go out in an awesome way and start this new From the Ashes era in a fun, manner. And so I was excited for it. And I think what this one issue did is encapsulated all that was good and all that was bad about it in the same issue. And so the problem was the stuff that was the bad part was like 3/4 of the book. So I was like, I can't justify that one.
There was a lot of, I was like, oh, here comes the X-Men.
It opens up with an awesome sequence. So Uncanny X-Men 700 had several things going. The main story, Dream's End, which is the end of Krakoa, was written by Jerry Duggan, Al Ewing, and Keith Giffen with like 15 artists. The first part definitely felt like Jerry Duggan had his artist on it, so I assume that's what it was. It was a continuation of the last book we talked about where Wolverine had gone off to kill Professor Xavier. And so here we get him attacking the convoy that's taking Xavier to jail. I thought the sequence was terrific. I really liked it. It had a lot of the fun stuff that Jerry Duggan brings. There's some humor, some good action. Magneto shows up and just... I laughed out loud when he tossed Wolverine away. It's an easy joke, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I liked the conversation between Xavier and Magneto that Phil Noto drew. I don't know who wrote that. But then everything after that, up until we got back to Xavier, everything with Apocalypse.
Oh, 100%.
And the people who came back, and then they're all annoying hippies now. I was just like, I hate everything that's happening here. And the problem was that was like 3/4 of the book. And so I couldn't make it the pick just for a fun opening and a good close.
Yeah, we got really into like X-Men, and so like all this stuff about Nightcrawler and Raven.
We haven't even gotten there yet. So like the whole bit about like the cosmic-y stuff, which we've basically been skipping. It's been happening in other books. Every time it happens in a book I was reading, my eyes would roll into the back of their heads. Because I just don't care. I didn't care about the planet, whose name I've already just... Arrakis.
Wait, no.
That's Dune.
It's something like that, though.
It's like that. And then, I wasn't reading those books, so I didn't know about the people who were sent to this other dimension who apparently would live there for 15 years and became annoying hippies. And then the interesting thing was in that time, they used the resurrection powers to bring back everyone who died in Genosha, which was a long time ago. There's millions of people. That's interesting. But it didn't do away with all the annoying Apocalypse stuff.
They all like popped out from nowhere, and it was like 7 million of them. I was like, so there are a lot more people behind them?
Right.
Like, there was like a little line of like a dozen or so people. And then they're like, there are millions. I was like, are they all there? Like if you pull the camera back?
Yeah.
It was weird.
There are millions of us.
You think the artist like saw it was like,
fuck that.
You can have 20.
I did enjoy Doom showing up in his flying Viking ship to steal a seed from Krakoa. Like there were little bits and pieces in the middle that I enjoyed. I liked seeing all the pinups, Simonson, and I loved the Romita one.
Mm-hmm.
I like seeing all that stuff, but then for the most part, I just did not care about anything that happened. So I was so happy to get to the new era of X-Men because I was just like, send this away. Send all of this away.
I will tell you that I feel a little bit that in what I read, and I didn't read all of it, but I read 2 or 3 of these series.
Yeah, you read X-Men and you read something else.
Right. And I still feel like the Xavier thing was not well earned. Like I don't feel like I saw where it came from, why it mattered, where it started, or really where it ended. Like I feel like he was at the party and he was one of the people who was killed, I guess. And then later it shows up and he had done the bad thing, and then they captured him, and then Wolverine was going to kill him. And I don't feel like that was significant enough because it's a major point at the end of this story, but I feel like it didn't really show up until the 3rd act.
Right.
And it was, to me, from out of nowhere. And so the significance of it and the weight of it was fumbled to me.
I'm just over Xavier and Beast and Cyclops being assholes, or at least people are perceiving them as being assholes. I'd like them to go back to being heroes. The very first page of this comic, it's like a 1-page Grant Morrison style 9-panel grid history of the X-Men. And I was like, can we get back to those first 4 panels? Mm-hmm. That's what I want. I just want the X-Men to be heroes. I want Xavier to be the teacher. I want them to not hate each other all the time.
Yeah.
We find out that Xavier in his prison that Reed and Tony put together, which I guess the Illuminati give prison privileges over each other. He still has a way to get his mind out. And I just kept thinking, how does he go to the bathroom? They've got him locked in a chair. Anyway, then there was a Chris Claremont story drawn by Salvador LaRocca about the Mystique, Destiny, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Weird Family, and I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I read it, but I was just like, I don't care about anything happening here.
Yeah, it was like everything for a while in X-Men came into focus, and I was like, I'm in it. Let's do this.
Yep.
And so many of the things were either put in the back burner or just forgotten or just overshadowed. And then as they sort of ended this, it was just like, and let's go right back to the monstrosity of a mess.
So I've been reading Tom Brevoort's Substack lately because people have been talking about it. So I looked it up and I've been reading it weekly. He talks about a lot of interesting stuff, and I get the sense, and I could be wrong, but I get the sense that he also feels that way and wants to sort of get back to basics as much as possible with what they've done. Now the X-Men are back in the world amongst the people. They're back to being sort of not normal, but they're not this powerful nation state. They're just the people in the world, and that's what I'm hoping for And so we get a sense of that at the end here with Jed McKay and Gail Simone, who are two of the main writers on the X-Men books going forward. So we see Xavier, he's able to monitor everyone outside. And we see Cyclops and Beast, who are going to convert one of the Orcus bases in Alaska to their X-Men base. I think it's Alaska. And then we see Rogue and fucking Gambit hanging out and doing whatever they do. And then Kitty Pryde, who is not slinging coffee, but slinging cocktails at a bar, just wants to live a quiet life, which totally makes sense for someone who's gone so deep into her dark side, would want to just get away from it, all of it. And we see Miss Marvel, we see Wolverine, we see Havoc in an alleyway in Malibu.
Yeah. Yeah, you do see that, don't you?
And Dazzler performing. Like, all, you know, they're sort of getting back to being in the world and life, and Storm speaking to the UN. So I'm really hoping this is, you know, we had the super deep for the X-Men nerds Krakoa era, and I enjoyed it. And I was a huge X-Men fan in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to get back to sort of them being more accessible to more people, which I think is part of the reason why they're not so popular as they used to be.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is that like everything got to be so big in that like everyone was an Omega level, and this person could level the world if they wanted to. And like you lost track, like the sort of amount of power was so massive everywhere. And there was a number of characters and all of the intrigue and you know, relationships between everybody. It just got to be incomprehensible. And, you know, a lot of it came about when I wasn't really reading it, and I missed a lot of it. But it's not like I haven't seen it enough in that time that if it was going to grab me, it would have. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like you can blame like, oh, I wasn't reading at that point, so I don't get any of this. But that's stupid. I wasn't reading when most of this stuff was created, and you pick up on something. But the X-Men, and I always considered a feature, not a bug. It's just like, okay, this whole thing is just designed for someone else, right? You know, like, and that's fine. But it's nice that there was, for a little while, there was like something there to read. And
I really enjoyed the Krakoa era. You know, Fuck Island, all that stuff. In fact, one of the characters here, wearing a t-shirt that says Krakoa was for lovers. I was like, yeah, you guys knew what you were doing.
I noticed that. I thought of you.
But the really deep in parts, the parts that like Kieran Gillen was really writing, and I just couldn't care. I didn't care about that planet. I didn't care about the politics. I'd like to get back to basics. And hopefully that's what we get. I mean, I read X-Men all through junior high school, all through high school. You know, the heyday of the Claremont, Jim Lee days, Adjectiveless X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor. I read all that stuff. I think people should be able to pick those books up and read them without knowing a million pages of backstory. We'll see. Mm-hmm. Did you check out Falling in Love on the Path to Hell, #1 from Jerry Duggan and somebody named Brown?
Yes, I did.
In this copy I had, at least there was no title page. Unlike last time we messed up, there was one of the books that didn't have title page, but this one didn't. I triple checked.
I went back and I was like, well, maybe mine didn't. And then I was like, yeah, no, I did miss that. I absolutely missed in the grommets. I missed the but it doesn't matter. I knew that was Russ Wooten or Wuss Rooten, which is a thing that comes out of my mouth sometimes. I read this because it's a Jerry Duggan book, and whoever this Brown is, I think does a fine job. I kept thinking it was somebody else. I was like, this looks like somebody. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I was like, I don't know what it is. What I found myself wondering, basically, how would you describe this? There's two stories that take place.
The solicit says basically cowboys and samurai disappear around the same time in the world, like in the real world, like around the late 1800s, because some technology
they are contemporary.
Right. Yeah. Technology knocked them both out around the same time.
Right.
And so this is a love story between a cowboy and a female samurai. We'll just get past that. I was okay with the mysticism elements of them both being like near death, them both, you know, sitting on the beach, looking out into the water, seeing the same island, and both ending up there. I was okay with that level of mysticism. And then the monster shows up, and I was like, oh, fuck me. I ended up not loving it because, of course, there was a monster.
Well, it felt like they were both taken to like some sort of, what was it, like the Purgatory Island or whatever.
Right. They're on a lost island.
I'm okay if you get, I mean, whatever it is like, hey, let's have a samurai lady and a cowboy guy hang out. And I actually really liked that it was falling in love. So you knew there was something because it seems pretty far-fetched that they would have a relationship of any kind. But I thought that was actually like knowing that from jump. Right. I was like, all right, cool. You know, and they ended up there at some sort of monster island with a, what do you call that guy? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I was going to say like a Turk. like in the old sense that they would just refer to lots of people from around there
Well,
as Turks.
it could have been a Turk.
No, I think Seek is right. He's got the knife.
Yeah, I think it was
something.
Mohan. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, throw a bunch of people, and he looks like he's going to be about from that time. Was it 1876?
I'm not down on the book. The monster showed up and I went, oh man. And then I just, it was just the last 2 pages and I get it.
However they got there was sort of the magic-y bit. Also, the monster in this was terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
Like a lot of times comic book monsters, but when they're bugs and they make a clicky sound, I don't like it. Giant bugs make clicky sounds, and the guy's like, we need to get out of here right now. Don't make any noise. And I was like, okay, I'm freaked. So I'm cool with that.
This is a bloody book.
Yes, it was.
Especially the samurai fight where there was heads lopped off. There was a guy who got a sword through his chin and through his head. And
what I wondered was this. Yeah. All right, we are in Western culture, and a little bit, as much as these things happen in the zeitgeist way, we're having a little samurai moment.
Mm-hmm.
Shogun comes along, a lot of people watch it, all of a sudden you've got that. When was this conceived and put out that it comes on the tail of that? Did he know about that show and thought this is going to be a hit? I'm going to do it.
Well, he is in Hollywood.
I guess, but either way.
Smart. Although it should have come out like 3 months ago in the midst of all the Shogun madness. But yes, nice timing.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice. You got to give credit for that. And it was, it's good stuff.
Whoever this Brown character is when he's at home is terrific. I'm looking at the page where Mohan shows up. Mm-hmm. He looks great. I said the monster was scary. He's doing cowboys, he's doing samurai, he's doing crazy mystical stuff. There's a great shot where they're both floating towards the island on the same page, and it's all pink, and the colorist is O'Halloran, whoever that is. This is a really good-looking book, and I was really happy for 80% of it, and I was a little annoyed for 20%, but I'm willing to overlook that and keep reading it.
Who does this art remind me of? It is like right on the tip of my tongue.
Somebody.
There's some Sean Murphy in here. There is maybe a little Raphael Albuquerque.
A little bit.
It looks very much like pen and ink to me.
I'm thinking of, I was going to say a number, but that's not right. I'm thinking of like inkers turned artists.
Yes,
who is
Klaus
that?
Janson.
Klaus Janson.
Klaus Janson here.
That's something give.
Yes.
Yes,
that is it.
Put together, our 2 brains are almost one functioning brain.
It's almost, like, to be fair, you put us together a pretty good brain.
It's almost there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like halfway through, I was like, oh, this is good. This might be pick of the week. And then I was like, oh, fucking
What
monsters.
I really liked about it was that, like, I had no idea what it was going to be. I bought it on the strength of, it's a Jerry Duggan book. I trust Jerry Duggan. I'm going to try everything. That he puts out from a creator-owned standpoint, and I just like the full-on, like what? Let's see what it is, and it could be anything. His creator-owned stuff is extremely diverse. Like can't pin him down.
Look at the cover. Look how Star Warsy it kind of is.
Flip, 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 flip.
Not just the space stuff, but like the samurai influence of Star Wars, and it's like the Han Solo cowboy side, and almost like Darth Vader in the background. It's very Star Warsy.
That's a Drew
Struzan.
Yeah, that's a Drew Struzan cover.
Oh, Gary Brown.
Oh, that is actually the other reason I picked it up. Because Gary Brown, British artist.
Yeah, he signed the cover. So it's Gary Brown.
I saw it. I must have seen it in the solicit when I was looking up what the book was. Gary, your son.
Gary.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh.
He just wants to drink his beer and read the paper, and this woman.
She threatens him. So, are you enjoying this as much as we clearly are enjoying doing it? Well, if you're enjoying listening, first of all, we appreciate that. Second of all, if you feel like taking the extra step in supporting the show, you can do so at patreon.com/iFanboy. We have a lot of shows we do, a lot of bills to pay, a lot of time away from family, and we thank everyone who helps make that possible by being a supporter. Patreon's the most direct way. You can unlock shows. You can become part of a great community on Discord and Facebook. There's a monthly patron hangout. You can sign up for a yearly membership for 10% off if you don't want to be a monthly subscriber. Tier exclusive merch. $5 or higher, you get Patron power. $10 or higher, you get Discord access and the ad-free show feed. More details at patreon.com/iFanboy. iFanboy.threadless.com is our merch store. We got 13 designs in those merch items. Not just t-shirts, but skateboard decks and shower curtains and shower mats, I think even. Or something. Some kind of mats are in there. Mm-hmm, all that's at iFanboy.threadless.com. iFanboy.com/supports our digital PayPal tip jar. iFanboy.com/Amazon's our general shopping link. So if you're doing any Amazon shopping, please consider going through that link. Helps us out. You can also find our Booksplode books there. And also bookshop.org is our partner. that helps local bookstores. When you order a book through them, a local bookstore fulfills your order. And they're the lifeblood of civilization. Just about a month ago, whenever I saw the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, I went to the bookstore next door, walked around, felt good.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like I was with my people.
You felt the books.
I did. I ran my hand across the spines.
Sure.
It's a really sexy moment for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
So thank you. We do appreciate it so much. We couldn't do the show without you. We appreciate all of everyone who listens. We appreciate everybody who supports us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Beyond the Pale number 1 is Dark Horse, I think, before I...
Yes.
Basically, what we've got here is and I'm telling you the race of these characters because it's about the story. A black female reporter goes to a sort of forward operating base in Vietnam and is trying to do a story, and she's investigating why several of the black soldiers have disappeared from this sort of base. And it's got a very Steve Dillon... It doesn't look like Steve Dillon per se, but the page layouts and the compositions look a lot like Steve Dillon to me. It's almost good. And then again, at the end...
The art of the book itself.
The book itself, like, it's almost got it, but there's like a monster.
And that's why I didn't get it. I read the thing on Dark Horse because I always look at the books that are coming out that week. And it was like, I'm reading the solicit about the reporter in Vietnam. I was like, ooh. And then you got to the end and it was like a new eldritch horror story. And I was like, no.
Well, the thing is it didn't need to be there.
I didn't want to read that.
I mean, like, it was a weird camp and like stuff was going on and like, I don't know. I don't think you need the metaphor of the monster. I also think, it was a little, the characters were a little unsubtle, I suppose. Yeah, everything was a little on the nose. And I think that there's something really cool here. And it's an interesting kind of story to tell, but it didn't need Eldritch. I don't see the point of it because metaphor is useful sometimes, but other times it isn't. And honestly, the horror of Vietnam and then adding, everything else to it, like, you don't need to make it scarier. You just don't. And so I might read the next one because it was almost like the monster thing in here. Like, it could have almost been a visual metaphor, and I kind of would have been okay with that. And I actually went back when I was deciding to put it on the list and look. I was like, was that really there? And it was.
It was all a dream, Josh.
Yeah. So, gave it a shot. If that sounds like something you'd like, I think it's a strong enough effort, but it's not quite there.
It's interesting. We, you and I read a lot about World War II, or in general, but World War II specifically. And as we're actually recording this on the 80th anniversary of D-Day right now. And I just finished reading Masters of the Air. But then, like, I realized, and I'll be quick about this, the last couple of weeks I've been in a Vietnam space because I watched that show on HBO, The Sympathizer, which wasn't very good, but it was all about Vietnam. And then we're reading Get Fury, with the second issue came out this week.
Yep.
This came out. I actually watched this past week Platoon for the first time in like 20 years. Because it was just on, and I was like, I haven't seen that forever. So like, for some reason, just out of nowhere, all of a sudden, there's like 3 or 4 Vietnam things happening in my
having a little
storytelling in the week.
Little Vietnam.
It's not as much fun.
It's not. It's a really scary. It's very scary to me.
Yep.
And pointless, like way more. And so like it feels like everybody was trying to tell you from now to then that
we don't need to get into it, but that's, I mean, you can see the difference in the soldiers when you're involved in a righteous conflict versus a pointless conflict. It's a whole different ballgame. And
just so we're clear, this isn't about your dad.
No.
Who was there. It's not. It's like how everybody was victimized by it. Let's
talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 945 or 51, and it's Army of Inkers, which explains why it looks so different so much. I didn't realize until I was looking at the script, and I was like, oh, that's why I kept going, are we sure this is Ed McGuinness? That's because Mark Farmer, Cliff Rathburn, and Wade Von Grawbadge are all inked him.
Gotta say, though, it's an all-star squadron.
It's a hell of a fucking lineup of inkers, but I was still, I was like, why is this so different looking? Because the inker can really influence the style. They don't look bad. I just look different. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. But, I was just happy to be able to bring up Wade Von Grawbadger again. So, once again, the Zeb Wells arc is a lot of things that I should hate. Like Peter Parker as the Green Goblin. Oh, that's rough. But at the same time, like, they did it well. And they had a good reason for it. And, it's not going to stick. So, whatever. That's kind of interesting. And then the reversal of sort of having Ben Reilly come around to sort of be the Han Solo to turn around and sort of save things again. I was like, okay, that's interesting. I sort of didn't. I mean, it makes sense now. Like, that's the hero's journey. Whatever it is. But Chasm's here to help.
Is there not a better name than Chasm?
Doesn't matter. He's not going to be Chasm. Well, actually, he might be. Who cares? Whatever. He's a giant empty space, and you can't tell me that that's not an appropriate name.
I get it. I'm just saying. I said, come on. He's wearing a Spider-Man suit. Give him a Spider name. I happen to still love the Walking Brain now.
Yeah.
I love this fucking guy, Doug. Is that his name?
Oh, yes, it is. Doug.
Who's just always there.
Can we talk about the Walking Brain? Great. But I forgot that Jonah is buddies. He has a relationship with Otto's old arms, and he's got a smoking jacket.
And a scotch. And the arms have a scotch.
Yes.
He's romancing the arms.
Uh-huh.
That's weird. Everyone's fetishes are cool as long as no one's getting hurt. But what are you even doing with that thing?
I thought it was more like he's a dog.
Well, it's holding a scotch in the chair with him.
That's what a dog would do if it had thumbs. A dog would be like, can I do this for you?
Spider-Man or Spider-Goblin fighting the Sinister Six was fun.
It was fun. It was really fun. That's all.
It's really funny because at the one point where Mysterio shows up as the Avengers or the fake Avengers, it didn't occur to me at first that we were looking at the wrong versions. Miss Marvel shows up in her leotard outfit. Now I didn't Captain Marvel. Well, she was Miss Marvel back then. It didn't even register in my brain. I was like, oh, there's Wolverine in his brown outfit. I was like, oh, this is like the Bendis era.
It did register, just not like consciously, but there was like something's wrong here. So you flip that page, but like it didn't like the fact that I figured out at the same time Spider-Man did,
right?
That was Mysterio, and it's cool. It was good.
So we've reached the halfway point of Love Everlasting.
This is only the halfway point?
15, yeah. They said it's 30 issues.
Jeez. I keep thinking, I'm like, this has to be it.
Tom King and Elsa Chartier. I think this issue is important because we finally had something really different happen.
Yes.
And then it says at the end, basically, like, we'll be back soon, so I think they're going to take a little break. But I think the second half of this book has to be vastly different. As much as I've loved this first 15 issues, and how it's basically the same story over and over in different ways, they have to now move on to what this is actually about and why everything is happening. But I really like this issue as well, where, the cowboy's basically given up on his position of having to constantly kill her because he's in love with her, Joan. And the mother shows up. And this was a really fun issue. And I was like, oh, things are actually revealing themselves bit by bit. But now they have to move on to a different paradigm, I think.
It's so terrible because I was like, oh, God, it's finally going to be over. And then I was like, oh, it's not. And it's not that it's bad. It's just like you're like it's been the same thing over and over and over and over again for quite a while.
Yeah.
But you're right. It has to adjust.
It's to be continued in a little while at the end. So
I noticed that too.
They must be taking a little bit of a break, which is fine. Like I said, things did change here. This is the paradigm shift in the story. So now things have to be different now. So we'll see. But it's still gorgeous. And it's still really fun. It's such a non-Tom book while being very much a Tom book.
Yeah, and you really feel for the cowboy. I feel like we are being tortured, and I don't mean like, oh, this book's torture. I mean, but I feel like we are being dragged through it with those characters. Which is like, how much more can any of us take of this sort of constant disappointment and loss and the sort of just the pulling away of hope and joy?
Right.
They're really making you work for it.
Good. I'm glad. They're not spoon feeding us, which is nice.
Yeah.
So those are the books we wanted to talk about this week, but at patreon.com/iFanboy, every patron gets to vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, in kind of a squeaker, the winner was The Ultimates #1 from Dennis Camo, Juan Frigeri, Federico Blee, and Travis Lanham. Does that make every Ultimates book the patron pick? We definitely had Spider-Man, Black Panther, and X-Men. Yep, all the Ultimate books were patron pick. So what's interesting is when you put these books on a spectrum of how different are they, from the regular universe? This is more like if you put Black Panther on one end, because it basically feels like the same Black Panther as the regular book, and then you put X-Men on the other end. I'm not even convinced that's actually an X-Men book. It just feels like it's a Japanese teen romance book right now with some ghosts. This book lends itself more towards the X-Men than Black Panther, and it's even, I think, further past Spider-Man, which is different, but not so different than the regular Spider-Man. There's a lot of fun things going on here.
Who's Denise Camp is the question. So I meant to look that up afterwards.
Camp, not Camo. That's a
yeah. Camp.
Dennis Camp wrote 20th Century Men at Image.
Ultimate Magus Major. Who the hell is this person who gets to do the Ultimates?
Well, good pitch.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know why. I don't know who this person is, but they're doing the Ultimates and they're doing a damn fine job at it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There were some things I didn't love. I was like, oh, are we still doing this with Hank Pym even here?
True.
It's a kid Tony Stark. He's Iron Lad. You know, Thor is kind of injured, so Sif is there.
Mhm.
Reed is Doctor Doom. Like, I think there's all these fun mix and match elements. They've added the Wasp and Giant Man to the mix at the end here.
I like
So it's
that
fun.
Wasp is game right away.
Yeah.
She's like, let's do this thing. And while you're absolutely right, that thing with Hank Pym that will not go away, it did lend to what his character is going through. I thought it actually accomplished that really well.
Right.
You know, and why he was reluctant because he'd seen what he saw and, you know, whatever. It's Ultimates, different versions of it or whatever. Yeah, I thought it was quite good because it was a little more what you would want from an Ultimates book without being the same thing.
One of my favorite sequences was, you know, so we know from the Spider-Man book that they sent out these orbs with, you know, whatever in them to unlock their potential. And Spider-Man got his and listened to the message from Iron Lad and became Spider-Man, right? And so apparently they sent out a lot of them. And so we see in like a quick succession that they didn't all go quite as well as Spider-Man. Like some people got powers and they got killed right away because they didn't know how to use them. Or Hawkeye apparently just up and quits.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that there was like this isn't so easy for them. They are trying to secretly form this team to fight off the bad guys while also being considered to be the villains themselves and terrorists themselves. I think there's a good conflict here. Although with all these books going, at some point we got to figure out what's happening because they're all around the bad guys running the planet. And we haven't really made any progress on that story because we're still meeting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many books total this is supposed to be. I didn't even know this book was happening until it came out.
No.
So I'd like to get some progression in the overall story of them fighting the villains.
I do feel like what this did, though, and you didn't actually have to read the other books for it, it kind of filled in how those books came to be, and it took care of that pretty quickly. It set things up. You know, you had a little time travel thing and having it sort of fall apart and fail and not work. It had a lot going for it in that way.
I like that a lot, where they time traveled all these things out there, and so they thought they would turn around and look out the window and see all these superheroes flying around because they have sent these orbs back in time, but then none of them were out there, and they were like, "Oh fuck, you always like to see the brainiacs, you know, in this sense, not able to just think their way easily out of it. It's not so simple."
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was good. I thought the Juan Frigeri art was really strong.
Yeah, it was. There's a boot print page,
terrific,
with the crushed, like the two giant crushed monsters, and then everything. Like that was just, I was like, oh, I've never seen that. That's a cool image I've never seen before. You know, monster fight. I don't know if the Pims would be exterminators. That seems far-fetched. I really like the bit about like, oh, you got Moloids, and then there's like a whole thing about them and the, you know, the metaphor is immigrants, obviously, but like the sad sort of cowering Moloid family,
right?
And they just walk away. We're like, oh, we're gonna deal with it. Like a lot of interesting ideas, and I thought a really strong organization of all of those ideas in a economic amount of space. Again, this is a thing that many veteran comic book writers at Marvel struggle to do well.
The only thing I was kind of bummed about, and I know it's just like what your taste is like everything's moving so fast that like Captain America unfreezes and he has like 2 panels where he's like freaking out and then he's like just totally fine with everything.
I'm fine with that.
I know that, but I like to see the character stuff of him.
Right, but also keep in mind here that it's an Ultimates book.
Right.
Like the Ultimates book was originally done like that on purpose. That was what it was. Right. It was, let's make everything move. Let's not spend a lot of time on the stuff, you know? And so whatever, like I like that economy of it because you know he's going to get there anyway. So maybe we don't need to spend that much time. And maybe it'll be a Captain America book where we do. Who cares?
Yeah, no, I think it's just emblematic of the modern day comic where we don't really get those moments anymore because we're so obsessed with moving the plot forward and writing for the trade that we don't get to spend quiet moments with characters. But I get it. That's just the way comics are. And I miss the old ways. And that's just me being old.
I think that is like endemic to this book. I think it is like part of this specific kind of story that they're going to, that's what the Ultimates has to mean something consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it though. I liked it. I was like pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I was too.
Ratings on the Ultimates, number 1 ratings. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah, that.
And I'm sticking with it.
Yes. I'm still reading. Well, I'm not reading Black Panther.
I'm reading all of them. Black Panther is fine. The art's terrific. It just doesn't feel any different than a regular one. X-Men, I'm reading more out of bewilderment that this is still happening. Yeah. And they're like no hurry to make it an X-Men book.
I want to know what's going to happen. I'm just fascinated to see what the execution is going to be. I don't know that I get it. I don't know that I enjoy it. I know I don't hate it. I want to understand it. That's what's going on with that.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. If every patron gets to vote, add a book to the rundown, but if you're a patron at the $5 or higher level, you get a patron power live on the show. Like Reece Stankiewicz.
Good name.
Reece Stankiewicz. I have a whole list of powers here that I've been thinking of lately. Okay, this one is relevant to me. Reece Stankiewicz can shrink any object, but only up to 30%.
I mean, you remember that couch that we couldn't get into my apartment?
Right.
I mean, there's a win. Wait, can you put it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can, but the shrinkage of mass and weight only goes up to 30%.
I don't know how many things you assemble. I assemble a lot of things. I do. I put bikes together. Guitars. I've done that. I've been on a building RC car kit because it's a great thing to do with my hands.
Yeah.
If I could shrink things 5%, it would make my life enormously better.
Let's say, I don't know, you wanted to upgrade your stove because your stove is terrible and doesn't work. And
my old house.
And you want to get it out. Your landlord's like, yeah, you can do that. And then you go, cool. And then you think, wait, let me measure it. And you find out that it's 1 inch too big to get out of the kitchen.
Yeah, been there.
Reece would be very handy in that scenario. So that's where
huge.
I'm at.
I mean, like the only problem is that everyone's going to want that guy to help them move. And that's not like you want to be the guy who's a good guy.
That's Reece's villain origin story. One more person asks him to move. And he's just like, fuck this.
You better, I tell you what, he definitely doesn't want to buy a pickup truck because you don't want to be the guy with a pickup truck.
Or you can charge astronomical prices.
Well, yeah, but that's not a thing. You do yes, that's if a professional, but we're talking about like friends. Is that still a thing? It was like, that's what young people did. You'd ask people to come help you move or drive you to the airport. Those were things.
I'll drive people to the airport. At this point, I just tell everyone to hire a mover.
Okay, well, sure.
None of us can lift anything heavy anymore. Come on.
I still can. I'm aware of the fact that it could change at any point. So I had to put all the air conditioners in. There are 5 that needed installation. And I thought, is this the year? And it wasn't. It wasn't the year. I did it.
It would have been a bad thing if your back had also gone.
Yeah, because no one else is doing it it's a problem.
You should be wearing a back brace. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thank you, Reece, for being a patron at the $5 or higher level. And let's answer some emails. Alex C. from Wellington, New Zealand. I was bored the other day and decided to do some quick math on John Romita Jr.'s contribution to Spider-Man. The guy's penciled 119 issues over the last 44 years. And with legacy numbering being at 944, that was 2 weeks ago, this puts him at having drawn 12% of all the issues of Amazing Spider-Man. This is not including annuals or supplementary titles such as Spectacular or Adjectiveless. Has any other comics creator ever maintained their pace at the top of the industry as long or as successfully as John Romita Jr.? I spent about 20 minutes thinking about how to turn random trivia into a coherent question. This is a terrific email. And I don't think anyone ever has had this career.
I can't think of anybody.
Not this long.
Yeah. What happens to a lot of people who have been around for a very long time is that at a certain point, they taper off or they become so, I don't know if successful is the right word, but they become able to not do the workaday stuff or they choose not to. Like nobody does solid runs of mainstream superhero comics as long and as frequently as he does.
No.
Like he's still, oh, sure, I'll do 25 issues of whatever. He's got to be nearly 70. We've talked about this. He's still doing it, which is crazy at a high level.
He's 67 years old. He's been doing it since he was 24, in the early 70s. He's been basically drawing these books our entire lives.
There's some people, there's barely any writers who do that.
Right.
Like Dan Jurgens, maybe Jerry Ordway was one of those guys, but he slowed down.
No, you don't see Jerry Ordway knocking off a 25-issue run of Spider-Man.
No, but he was one of those people that was around like a good solid 30 years or something.
Sure.
That,
but I'm just saying, he's still doing it. He's still knocking them out.
You know what? That's insane. At that level, because penciling full-time monthly comic books knocks people out eventually. It's
hard to be hunched over a drawing table, a drafting table, for 40 years. That's, he's a super fit guy. He's,
that's totally.
It probably helps that he is, but man, when you think about it like that, Yeah, I can't think of anyone who's been doing regular pencil work for that long. They usually graduate to covers or commissions or whatever, but he's still doing it.
Yeah. Good
It's
work
crazy.
too. Like it doesn't, like a lot of these folks, as they settle into their style, it loses a lot. And not in a bad way. It just becomes more economic because you got to get through and do the work. Even Darwin Cook did that.
Right.
Romita still looks like Romita.
And look, you can like him or not like him, but you got to respect the fact that he's done 12% of all of the issues of Amazing Spider-Man and has been doing for 44 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he even had a pinup in this week's Uncanny X-Men. So
that must be is like, hey, you want to do a pinup of Spider-Man? All right. Or, like he's like, sure. Like he must also be, he's got to be enthusiastic. There's no other way you could do it.
Right.
No other way.
It's in his blood.
Even so, that's really something. How long has Brevoort been around? I don't think he's as old. No. I don't think he's that. I think Romita was there before him.
Right, and that's even different of just being.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just trying to think about like constant presence kind of people.
Brevoort's not even 60 yet.
No,
he's been around a long time, but
even like Dan Jurgens, he came and went a lot. I mean, like that's me just trying to. He drew also, but I'm just trying to think of like anybody who's even like been forefront of mainstream comics constantly for that long.
Right.
I cannot think of anybody else.
It's crazy.
Yes, it is.
Khalid M. Here's a question I've been thinking about since February 1987, when I was a big fan of Peter David's writing and followed him to any book he would write.
10th birthday.
I remember reading a lot of great comics by Peter David, including his new universe work, Justice, etc., which had great stories, but some terrible and amateurish artwork at the time, despite some early weeks art, if I remember correctly. My point is, I followed the writing despite the poor art. I think I could do that then, but I struggle to do it now. For example, I know you guys have been raving about the current Fantastic Four run by Ryan North and Jerry Duggan's Iron Man, but I couldn't get past how bad the artwork was on the whole. Are there any writers or artists you would follow anywhere despite disliking the art or writing? Or is it a stumbling block in some cases?
Wait. Writers you would follow anywhere despite the art, I'm with you, or writing. Okay, so wait.
Any writers or artists you would follow anywhere?
There are not a lot of artists who I would follow regardless of the story. I probably wouldn't read the story. I would look at the art. There's a few.
Well,
like
I'm still following them though.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily. I would say that I don't give most writers. If the story is good, the art would have to be really bad to make me jump off it. If it's a writer I love, if my favorite writer is Garth Ennis, they've certainly put us to the test on that.
Right.
And I haven't read everything he did because he does a lot of horror stuff that I don't really like. But I'm trying to think of.
I mean, it's a visual medium, so I've got to at least like the art. Even doesn't matter how good the story is. If the art's bad, then I can't deal with it.
I would switch it up in a little bit, and I think the art has to be passable. Honestly, what ruins comics more than art does? Bad lettering and coloring are almost worse than bad art. And then bad art can mean a bunch of different things.
I'll definitely follow the artist. Like if it's especially someone who doesn't draw very much, like if Adam Hughes does a single issue of something, or Kevin Maguire or somebody, even if I don't necessarily want to read the characters or whoever's writing it.
Daniel Warren Johnson.
I'll definitely check it out just because they draw so infrequently.
Greg Smallwood.
Right.
There's definitely a handful of I've read a lot of books that Kev Walker drew that I wasn't interested in. There's a handful of them.
But for me, I can't get past bad art. Doesn't matter how good the story is. Because they have to work in tandem. That's what the medium is. Otherwise, it's just read a novel.
Yes, but have you ever stopped reading a story that you enjoyed by a writer you liked because the art was not up to snuff?
Sure I have, yeah. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a visual medium. I gotta like the art.
I get it.
It's not a radio play.
That's fair.
But man, it wounds me. That's how crazy the art being so personal and different wounds me to hear him say that about FF, which I think is some of the best art in superhero comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the nature of art.
Salvador LaRocca took me to the test a couple of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he would be drawing something. I was like, I really don't like this, but I've still read.
Did you like it this week on X-Men?
Nope.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
No, I didn't. He was, he was great on. He was great when he was doing Darth Vader. He was fantastic for Darth Vader.
He's good at masks.
It was.
All right. Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Khalid. Contact at iFanboy.com is how they got on the show. You can write in to get an email on the show. You can also write in for our Media Explode show by putting Media Explode in the title. Thank you very much. I will mention this again. I guest starred on a show called Movie of the Year 1984, Ghostbusters. It's a podcast that's taking the 16 best films as decided on by Letterboxd users for every year and just trying to decide which one was the best. Right now they're doing 1984, and I did a Ghostbusters episode. You can find it on popfilter.co. I had a lot of fun doing it. It's half analysis, half game show. And the guys there, Ryan, Mike, and Greg, are super awesome. I had a great time. Also, our buddy Ron, our co-founder of iFanboy, our original co-host and our Newsflow co-host, was on Techsploder with Jason Howell this past week. You can find it at techsploder.com. He mentions in the copy that he's talking about the start of iFanboy. I have not listened to it. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's there, and you can listen.
He does that show about iPhones or Chromebooks or something, right?
Right, with that guy.
Mm-hmm.
With Jason Howell. Josh, have you been on any other podcasts lately?
No, I took a little moratorium. There was too many. I've done several episodes. My friend and iFanboy's been around a long time. Eric Hansen does a horror podcast called From the Cradle to the Grave. God, I hope I got that name right. And he keeps having me on to talk about horror movies, which I don't like.
Are we all doing that soon?
I don't know that it's soon, but that's
the show.
Sort of the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So at some point later in the year, Josh, Ron, and I are all going to go on this show and talk about a horror film that's related to comics. You can probably figure it out if you think real hard.
What's really interesting is that he does a deep dive on a given movie that are some of the episodes, and the other ones are guests. And this guy books some goddamn guests. Like I have been like, oh my God, how do you get all these people? Like, and I don't say this with any of you, but like I am nothing. And I'm like, I don't even deserve to be in this group of people.
No.
Yeah, so, but he's been a fan of the show.
So look for that later on this year. We'll be looking forward to doing that. And also, thank you for all who've done it so far. And I'll give you another chance to fill out our audience demographic survey at ifanboy.com/survey. We're doing this for the first time since, I think, around 2008. We wanted to get a sense of the demographics of the listeners so we can, tell the advertisers, get some appropriate advertising here. And so we appreciate everyone filling it out. It takes about 5 minutes or less to fill out your basic demographic information. It's all anonymous. And we thank you for that. Thank you all who've done it so far. And thank you if you consider doing it in the future. We had our month from hell, but May was a lot of podcasts. We did 8 podcasts. Slowed down this month. We're back to normal in the meantime. We're looking forward to a Media Splode show on June 20th. We're going to do Old Man and Old Movies. Peggy Sue Got Married. We talked about that in the last show. We're going to do that one. That's the old Francis Ford Coppola, Kathleen Turner film. And then on June 27th, it's going to be a book splode that Josh and I have yet to figure out. And the clock is ticking as the time drifts away. So we need to get on that. But as soon as we
do issue 4 of 1987's She-Hulk series,
we're going to get back to you as soon as we know what that book is going to be. And then if you're a patron, 2 days later on June 29th will be our patron hangout for June. So you can look forward to that. All in June, coming this month. It's already June. Halfway through the year.
That was quick.
How'd that happen?
I mean, life.
Yeah.
That was quick, all of it.
Well, that was fun, everybody.
You can find our library of over 1,400 shows, or almost, I don't know, over at ifanboy.com, wherever podcasts are available for download. A friend of mine asked me this question too. He said, does it matter to your stats or whatever, which sort of podcasting app or whatever you use? And I was like, no, it doesn't make any difference. So whatever, it's the download that counts.
Well, and the listen, they also track how long you listen.
Yeah. But where you do it, it doesn't matter. Like, by the way, not that it should matter. If we offer the show somewhere, you listen to however you want. But you can follow Conor and I on Instagram at CSGoPatrick and Jay Flanagan. And of course, there is iFanboy Comics on Instagram. We will find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. Sometimes you'll find the best of the week in panels. Yeah, audiograms. It's all a good time.
And subscribe to youtube.com/ifanboy. You'll find all of our old video shows as well as this show. We post it every week. But really, the old video shows back from the 2007, 2008, 9, 10 era. Young, fancy-free, full of life and vigor. Hardly anything hurt back then. And lots of shorts, as we talked about last week. Was it last week we talked about shorts?
Maybe. I think so.
So check that out. Those were a lot of fun. I actually was thinking about it the other day. I found some crazy old thing that DC had published like in the 70s. And I was like, oh man, this would have made a great mini to talk about. It just flashed in my head. I hadn't had that thought in years. I used to love doing those mini shows. Anyway, you can find all that at youtube.com/ifanboy. Like and subscribe, our guests or whatever. And consider leaving a review or star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate that. Helps people find the show. It helps the algorithm. If you're just leaving a star rating, it doesn't take you more than a second to click that star rating. Whatever star rating you want. Most shows you listen to will ask you for a 5-star. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say do whatever you think is appropriate.
Yeah.
Although do it on the whole, not on a specific episode or a specific book in a specific episode. They didn't like this book that I liked. 1 star. That's not helpful for anybody.
No.
Doesn't make you look good.
We can't promise that we'll agree with you.
We can't promise we'll mirror your tastes. We can only hope we'll be an entertaining discussing the book. That's all.
Yeah.
Hey, checking the neck, still moist. Back of the head, little less moist, but little moist.
Lower back, just above the split.
Lower, wet. Wet. That's because I've been sitting in this leather chair.
Oh, so this is your problem. I got a mesh chair, and I'm in New England.
Yeah, wet. I didn't expect that. Ugh. Let's go shower
And on
now.
that swarthy note,
Thanks for listening. I'm Conor.
I'm Josh. Bye.